The average American debt per U.S. adult is $58,604. And 77% of American households have some type of debt, college debt, car loan, mortgage, whatever it is, credit card. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you can to pull yourself out. And like you said, Shannah, and what we hear so much on this podcast is your current reality doesn't have to be your reality. Create the reality that you want to create. Has everyone recovered from the holidays?
Oh, man. Financially, have you recovered?
Heck no.
Did you spend a lot of money this year, do you think?
So here's what happens with me. I plan stuff out and then I freak out by.
Yes,
I anxiety buy
Yep.
right before. And then Amazon says, will arrive by Christmas. And I'm like, add to cart. I
Yep.
need it.
Yeah, I know. I always do that. I always feel like it's not enough or something, and I don't know why. I started to have to like write things out so I could like visibly see like what I got for each person instead of just like, okay,
like the human and the gifts you
Yeah.
have purchased and have yet to purchase. Yes.
Yeah, no, but it was all it went well. But you know, I think January is always just like a reset for everyone, fitness wise, mentality wise, financial wise. So we have an excellent expert on today who's going to talk finances with us. But before we get into that, Casey and I wanted to share some stats about the state of the world.
Yeah.
Mostly just here in America for millennials, especially. And it's kind of crazy. We keep talking about or keep hearing about how the cost of living is going up and going up and going up. And really something that puts that into perspective is that over 1/3 of people that are earning $100,000 or more is living paycheck to paycheck, which is just a sin. Majority of American workers cannot afford a $400 emergency expense. That's no access to it in savings or anything. And 76% of employees don't have enough savings to cover 1 month of their expenses. So if something happens and they're let go of their job, they can't make it 1 month with the savings that they have. I just think this is terrible. I'm so grateful for my mother who impounded on me to save. So I do have savings. But yeah, it's like that probably wouldn't take me as far as I think, or as far as somebody my age 20, 30, 40 years ago. Maybe their savings was much more and the cost of living is just not, what it used to be. So we want to make sure that none of you are in this situation with our expert today. Case, I know you pulled some stats too. What do you got for us?
Well, going back to your stat about the emergency fund, experts say you're supposed to have 3 months saved in your emergency fund. And when you add children and a husband and a dog that's 13 years old and needs to go to the vet, I mean, seriously, like these are real life things. The car broke down. There's a hole in the roof, whatever, especially in Florida. Oh, there's a hurricane that rolled through, whatever.
I know.
So here is a stat that I found. I was talking to my mom about this when I was home for Thanksgiving, actually, that she said she read something where the Gen X, which is our parents and us, or the generation above us, there's a weird thing that's going on. And you called this a sandwich generation, I think.
Yes.
So the Gen X people are taking care of their millennial kids and giving them money. And especially during COVID, these kids were staying home with their parents, and not necessarily Gen X, but even the generation above them. And they're supporting them financially. Oh, I need you to co-sign for my apartment lease on the contract. Oh, I need a down payment for my house. And millennials are getting a lot more help than previous generations do. Non-retired Americans between the ages of 43 and 58, Gen X, estimate that on average, it will take $1.2 million, around $1.1 million in savings to retire comfortably. Yet they expect to have 661,000 saved.
Wow.
And that's according to Schroeder's 2023 U.S. retirement survey. So they have roughly half of what they need.
Right.
And they're already 58 years old, some of them. I mean, you used to retire at 60 or
Right.
65 or, it's insane.
So this concept of the sandwich generation, and maybe some of you are living this way right now, is you're taking care of kids and you're taking care of parents
Hmm.
because you're sandwiched in between both of them.
Well, that's for
And
us. We're having kids later and our
yeah,
parents are getting older. So they will, in theory, we will have kids in college or supporting them out on their own post grad. And then we will have parents living with us.
hmm
Lots of mouths to feed, lots to go
hmm
around.
there's this like epic Tide commercial that talks about that, and it's like for all of your dirty things in life or whatever, and it's like the little kid running up grabbing her underwear, and then also like the dad coming out of the bedroom like, honey, where are my pants? And she's like, Dad, go back to your bedroom. Like she's doing like laundry for the whole family. It's really funny.
I
Anyway,
never, just quickly, this is such a side note. Have you seen the Chevy commercial, the Christmas Chevy commercial? This was obviously a month ago now,
oh my
where the
God.
grandmother has Alzheimer's.
Oh
Did you
my,
see it?
I saw it for the first time and my jaw dropped. I hated everything about it.
I
What
was
were your
sobbing.
thoughts?
I
I
was
hated it.
sobbing. Oh
I
my
was
God, when the
like,
grandmother remembered,
I was like, how dare you do this to me as I'm casually sitting here watching TV? Like, I was upset that they went that deep into guttural emotion. Like, I felt abused
I don't even want to
having,
know what their Super Bowl commercial is going to be if that's their Christmas
oh,
commercial.
man.
Anyway, talking about money, Super Bowl commercials are like $7 million for 8 seconds or something
Chump
like
change.
that.
Should we get one for Mother Up?
It might be too late at this
I
point.
think we should. We should try.
Oh, they're all sold out next year. This, you
Shannah
know what?
game.
Shannah will help us budget for next year.
Shannah will help us. Here we go. Financial expert, Shannah game. Thank you for being here. Important topic we want to touch on financial literacy and how to handle your money, and also how to handle that when it kind of like push comes to shove in a relationship of what you do with your own children, how you speak to your children about money. Transformational money expert. How did you get into this field?
Oh, like a very interesting road, I think, like most people. I actually started my first business when I was in college. It was the first National Student Film Festival, and I ran it for about 5 years and then ended up selling it to a Hollywood producer. And I had,
Cool.
yeah, all of these like
Casual.
casual. I had all
Mhm.
this like mixed bag of skills and talents, and obviously, things that I learned about money. And I was like, what do I do with this? So I got an MBA, and my father had been in the financial industry his whole life, and he had started a new kind of boutique firm. And he was like, I'm kind of bored. Why don't you come, work with me? And so, from day one, we were working with people who had like $100 million, in assets and like these
Wow.
huge, massive estates. And I started to really see, the commonalities between people and money. So whether it was somebody who was just, out of college starting out, or somebody who had, a ton of money, I really started to see the trends that we all have sort of the same fears and the same stress points around money, and we all let money get in
Right.
the way of relationships, all these sorts of things. So I started to do what I love, which is speaking and talking and writing and all of that, and started my podcast. Everyone's Talking Money. It was originally started as Millennial Money, changed the name a couple years ago, but we started it in 2015 and it just really took off. I'm like, wow, this many people like want to tune in to hear me talk about money,
Yeah.
but you
Because it's
know,
so taboo.
it's so taboo. It's always the thing in the corner, and if we look specifically as women, we grew up
Yeah.
with sort of the societal belief of like, we don't talk about money, and women don't handle the money, and I mean, we could go layers and layers deep on this, but yeah, it's this taboo topic. So I just really wanted to talk about money the way I think money needs to be talked about, and I wanted to showcase the behavioral side, sort of the different side about money. I call it your relationship with money, that I really feel is the missing ingredient that nobody out there is talking about. And so, that's what I do on my show.
One of the things that I've always felt and heard, as like you were saying in this, like how money really interacts into relationships and everyday life. And it's not
Yes.
just someone's capacity to be able to buy things, but it's like their status in life, their ability to do certain activities or do certain things with their friends or their family. And there's always kind of been this like lingering ideology in my life, or like if somebody has an issue with family, it's 99.9% of time over money. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because we go back to we'll keep coming back to this taboo nature of money. And I think it's really because most of us don't understand our own relationship with money. And so then it just colors everything, right? It's conversations, it colors like our thoughts, like why did they buy this, or why did they spend money on this, or why, I mean, we talk about, we just came out of the holidays, and so many things, like some people can afford certain things and some people can't, but there are these expectations around money. So I think, we just don't have this common dialogue about money. We don't
Yeah.
usually have a safe
But what does
space.
that stem from? What does that,
Yeah.
if somebody's saying, oh, I feel this with my mom, or I feel this with my grandma, or I feel this with my brother, or I feel this with whoever it is, my best friend, where let's be the therapist for that person. What does it stem from?
Wow. Okay. We're going to just keep peeling the onion layers in this
Yeah.
episode, but money trauma I'm a certified trauma of money expert. And so I help people work through trauma around money. And I believe that all of us have layers of trauma around money. Could be anything from you got laid off from a job and like you couldn't make the money work to, relationship, but it also is generational trauma. So
Yeah.
if we look back at, our grandparents and our great grandparents, and the different things that they have had to live through historically, the Great Depression, and
Yeah.
They had to survive.
they had to survive. Well, all of
Right.
that trauma is carried and passed down through these generations. And whether it's something that it's talked about or something that is known, that doesn't matter, right? It exists kind of in our, genetic profile.
Mhm.
And then also the whole financial system has been built on scarcity. So it's been built around this idea of you're never going to have enough, you're not enough.
Yes.
All of this. So whether you're listening to, a TV show or a commercial or, whatever it might be, all of this messaging is infused into this. So we just kind of operate in this place every day where we're feeling like we're not making the right decisions. We're not going to be enough. We're not going to have enough. And so, money is really this place of like shame and judgment. You talked about relationships. That is the cornerstone of where money shows up is we blame other people. We make judgments. We have our own shame around money that we kind of bring to the table. So there, from a therapeutic standpoint, there's just a lot that we don't explore around money. We tend to think of it just as like, the amount of money in our bank account or the goals that we're trying to
Not
achieve.
active, not passive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's really woven into the fabric. It's a primal need. So we think about, air and water and food. We need those for survival. Well, unfortunately we need money for survival.
Yeah, water
too.
and food aren't free.
Right.
Exactly.
What I love about your show, Everyone's Talking Money, is that it really does become like this therapy sit down with some of the guests that you have on, because there's so much about mental health that gets intertwined in it too. And your guests will be very vulnerable and talk about a situation from their childhood or in their experience that has brought them to the point that they are in their relationship with money now. And you say you're in the business of helping people unbeep their relationship with money. I want to know, like, what are some key things that people can do for themselves to be a little bit more comfortable around it?
I think the first question that I have everyone answer, and it seems really easy on the surface, but it's a thinker, is how do you feel about money? And then I want you to think about why. So whatever your answer is why, right? So if it's money stresses me out. Okay, well, why is that? Like what's going on? And then I always say go 5 layers deep. So why that? Why that? Like we're trying to get to the foundation around how you interact with money. Like what is your perception of money on just a moment by moment, day by day basis? And that really brings
that could be a lie. Like
it could
Yeah.
be,
you know what?
yes.
I initially went, whoa, this is exactly like inner child work. And I've only scratched the surface of it. I think we all have a basic understanding of it. But you can say money stresses me out, but like you have this deep rooted, that might mean, oh, I don't like doing bills. No, that means you're watching Susie's Instagram and you need a Dior top and a Chanel bag too, because that's where you think that status comes. So it on the surface, it's one thing, but like you said, it's so much deeper than that. And people might not be capable of breaking that down.
Yeah, it's, I think it's an important process that everybody takes themselves through. And I think, we're all on a different journey with money. And, sometimes it might feel like, I don't know if I can scratch that
Yeah.
surface, but when we talk about motherhood in particular, there's scientific studies that show that our habits, our relationship with money, how we interact with money is set by age 7. Right. So that's when your
Wow.
subconscious has been basically cemented inside of you. So whatever you have seen, heard, witnessed, or even not seen, heard, and witnessed, right, becomes imprinted in what's called your limbic system inside of you. And that is the place where you learn how to process emotions and really understand like how to kind of navigate the world. So if whatever you've seen, and you could, I can share my own story. I've come from, a really great uh, family unit. Like I wouldn't think that anything, kind of negative would exist there, but I grew up, with in a well-off family, but we would go on like a vacation and we would come home and my dad would be talking about like, you spent $20 on, tanning lotion and
Yes.
$12 on a grilled cheese. So he would be
Those sundry
itemizing.
stores, if you forget your sunscreen, you got to pay the
Yes,
premium
right.
price. What are some things that maybe go unnoticed? Like, okay, all of us can say, "Oh yeah, my checking account's always overdrawn and I'm always late on my credit card payment." But what are little things that people do that they might say, "Oh, that's fine. I don't have an issue with money."
Yeah, it could be a lot of the beliefs. So, I ask people like, think back to your childhood. Was there a certain way, money was talked about? Like, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, or, all of those
Mhm.
kind of, statements that we tend to throw out. Those can create in you a belief system around money that then, it influences your actions that you take. But I walk people through what I call it a money pie, and it's really just a thought model. So if everyone knew this, I think it could change everything around money for everyone. So our thoughts control our feelings. So whatever we're thinking about money is like the most important thing. Like it's kind of the secret. So let's say I have debt, right? I can either think I'm the worst person in the world. I have X amount, I have $10,000 of credit card debt. Like I'm a terrible person. I could believe, my parents always said debt was bad. Everything I see in the media says I got to be debt free. And, all of this messaging is just, but I do the opposite. Like I go out and I spend more money, right? Why am I doing that? Like it doesn't make logical sense. Well,
Yeah.
it's because I believing this thought that I'm bad, and that the
Oh.
only way I feel
Is
good
that
about
because
myself.
the only thing you can control is your spending, so you go and spend?
Yeah, and it's illogical. Like spending is a
Mhm.
dopamine hit. So,
Yeah.
we like those dopamine hits. It's just like eating chocolate or having sex,
I
right?
was
We
just gonna say, I feel like I'm like this when I diet. Like, if I
totally.
know that I have 10 pounds to lose, I'm like, you know what? I am gonna eat because I have control over it. And I know I should lose weight, but
Yeah,
I can
it
eat.
it doesn't, like, your brain can't kind of suss it out. So you've got to go back and you've got to look at your thoughts. Well, okay, if my narrative to myself is like, well, I'm in debt, I've made, the worst choices. So what does it matter if I go out and like splurge on a purse or a pair of shoes? It doesn't matter ultimately, right? Because I'm already telling myself I'm a bad person. Well, that thought's going to influence my feeling about myself, and then it's going to influence my actions, right? I'm not going to make actions that are healthy and supportive of me getting to a better place. So if we go in and we change that thought, even if we just say, let's just say, maybe I'm not such a bad person. Like maybe that debt isn't the worst thing in the world. Like maybe I just make a little step thought. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going, I'm not reaching high. I'm just doing a little step thought. Okay, well, how does that make me feel? Okay, well, if maybe my debt isn't that bad, like maybe I feel a little hopeful. Like maybe I don't feel so bad at myself. And then my action, when I come up to that buying decision, like maybe I'm just going to give myself like a little like 24-hour pause. And I'm just going to
Mhm.
say, like, how do I really feel about buying this? Like, is it what I really want to do or is it not?
Mhm.
Right. And so I'm going to give myself like choices along the path there, but it's going to start with how I'm thinking about money, how I'm thinking about myself, how I'm thinking about those beliefs that have been ingrained in me. And I just really firmly believe like if everybody could just walk out this little example in their head just kind of over and over and over again and work on those thoughts, we would just like radically change how people interact with money.
That's so interesting. And I'm like swirling with things, how this relates in
You are
my
going to
life.
immediate decisions that you
I
wanted to
mean,
make.
not having to do with money, but even just this like negative self-talk
Mhm.
about I'm not good at this, so I can't do this. Like I am really struggling with a morning routine, and I have been like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then like it's like I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, whatever. I'm just like bad at this. I'm never going to be able to get a good routine. So like, whatever. I'm just going to
You
like go
also have
back to
2
my old
children.
habits. I know, but still. So it's like you saying that, that's exactly right. That's exactly the narrative that I have to myself. And it's like, if I just change that and help myself believe that I can, then maybe that will influence some of the decisions I make.
And
The
sometimes
other
that
thing, go ahead.
change word can feel really hard to get around. So I like to tell people like just practice. So like just wake up tomorrow and just
Hmm.
like practice a different thought about that and like just see how it works out, you know? So there isn't like a pass fail on it. It's just practicing something
Yeah.
different.
Because there's been like research that it's like in order for habits to stick, I mean, it needs to happen for like 3 to 4 days at a time or 6 days at a time, whatever it is. So, yeah, you're not going to wake up one day and just wipe all your debt out and wipe your spending habits out. Um, I want to get to this other piece of this. I'm going to kind of interweave a couple topics at one time. So, a lot of what you just touched on is this idea of I am because that's what you know in your own world. Casey had brought up social media and
Mm-hmm.
this comparison of seeing the other side of the world and seeing, oh my God, look what this person has, look what this person has. But we know that 9 times out of 10, that's not even real. We don't know
Mhm.
what they're doing. We don't know if that person is $20,000 in debt to even be able to get
And the
that.
purse is
So,
rented. Yeah.
and the purse is rented or the
Yeah.
purse is fake or all of it is just a
Right.
sham or whatever. There's so much, as you stated in the beginning, about this transparency that we don't really have because it's taboo. So this other topic that we talk about here a lot with, being mothers is miscarriage. It is something that you shared with us that you have experienced yourself. And thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's going to help us be able to get deeper into this topic. Because of that conversation in recent years being opened up way more than it has been, still, football fields worth to go. But there's been a greater sense of community, a greater sense of understanding for women
Mhm.
that go through miscarriage. I hope that was your case. I hope you felt supported. If not, we're here to talk about it today. Where do you see money going in the next few years or decades? Do you think it's something that can open up and get people to be a little bit more vulnerable about to say, hey, I'm actually not doing okay, or
Mhm.
these things aren't actually real, or you know what? Oh my God, everybody else is $10,000 in debt. Here, this whole time, I thought I'm a terrible person with money, but it seems that's actually the norm. Like, where could our society go with that?
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, that's, why I'm passionate about what I do. If I can just even, help a couple people open up that conversation, because I think it's really easy around money and social media to share, like we were saying, all the good things, and we don't even know if those are true or not true. But because we're so ingrained with thinking negatively about money, it's just so automatic for most of us that it's really easy to compare ourselves, with someone else and feel instantly like I will never have what they have, and I'm, it's instantly tied to self worth and
Mm-hmm.
all of those messages. So I really hope that, being able to have these platforms to share things that haven't gone well, money wise, personal wise, health wise, I hope that helps change the narrative around money, because we've kind of put money on this pedestal as being, this thing that we all, need to have. And so one of the things
Yeah.
I really like to help people do is like, we need to create our own vision for what we want our life to look like. And we need to be able
Yes.
to use our money to help bring that to fruition and sort of put blinders on to what somebody else is doing. But we've lost our way I think greatly, and we're trying to attach to other people's visions, and it's just not working. And that's how we're overspending, or we're underspending, or we're stressed out, or whatever it may be. And so I think it's really important to think about, especially in this new year, like, what do you want,
Yeah.
and then how can we use the money you have right now? How can we use that more mindfully to move in the direction that you actually want to go?
I just want to interject a quick stat, and this is from earlier this year, and Shannah, obviously, but for everyone listening, I mean this in the nicest way. If you have debt, you are not special. There are so many of us out there who are dealing with the same thing. And it's, it sounds so weird, but when you talk about having a miscarriage, it's like, you're not special in the best way. Like, you have a club of people swirling around you, ready to lift you up. The average American debt per US adult is $58,604. And 77% of American households have some type of debt: college debt, car loan, mortgage, whatever it is, credit card. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you can to pull yourself out. And like you said, Shannah, and what we hear so much on this podcast is, your current reality doesn't have to be your reality. Create the reality that you want to create, which I think is so important. And one last point, if you did rent the bag, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Just for the record, rent the bag and send it back. Take your picture and send it back.
That might be the smarter decision, right? If we're talking about mindful money, right? Rent it all. I
have been doing Rent the Runway since 2016. And every year they send me a roundup of everything that I ordered, how much it would have been,
That's insane.
How many flights it saved, how many coffees, blah, blah, blah. Last year, I think my total was like $29,000. And really, I'm only spending, I think, like $150, if that, a month.
Yeah.
And it's so smart. I wish renting was available for more things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Casey, you talked about in one podcast the Buy Now project to for people basically in their neighborhood, or, can share things amongst each other. And I think it makes so much sense. Great stats, Casey. Thank you for bringing that into it. What about savings? Can we talk about that for a little bit? What are some good tips to make sure that people can save? And is there like a benchmark of what you should have at this point? So it's like, say, like in your 30s and 40s.
Just to interject one thing that you can touch on, I think another thing, like you were talking about, there's this pressure. I think there's pressure, especially for our generation, to have a portfolio. It's like, well, what stocks do you have? And it's like, oh my God, I have student loans. I can't have stocks right now. So go ahead. So add that into your answer, please, Shannah.
Yeah. First I will say that, one of my rules is that there aren't any money rules. So, we can talk about generalities, but I think, there's so many like articles out there about, at this age, you should have X amount of money saved. And I'm like, asterisk mark, asterisk mark, asterisk mark. Like, there are so many different factors that go into that. And so, again, I think that brings someone back to that like fear and stress point around money.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to hear.
If you're saving anything, that's good, right? So if you're saving 1% or 5% or 10% or whatever it might be, that's great. Like, give yourself a round of applause, because that's the first step, And I think when we talk about savings, I talk often about having your savings, or having your money in general. Like, we'll come back to this word, like, are we using it mindfully? So I talk about high yield savings accounts versus regular traditional bank savings accounts. So a lot of people don't know this difference, but, a traditional kind of, you think of your big name banks, savings accounts at those banks, might pay like 0.01%. So basically nothing over your checking account. But a high yield savings account at, some of the great places right now are paying like 4.5% interest. So, it's just more money. So I always want people to look through the lens of like, am I spending my money wisely? Like, am I spending it the best way possible? We just talked about renting things. That's like a great way to think about spending and saving money, right? Let's take the money that we're saving from, not purchasing, but renting something, and let's use that money effectively. Like, let's put it towards our student loan, or let's put it in,
see, that's so hard, because I look at renting like burning money, like lighting money on fire in a dumpster.
Right. But then you're looking at like specifically around things like shoes and bags and clothes like that. Right. You're not, buying
No, I
something.
mean, I'm sorry. I thought like renting a home.
A
That's what I
house
was
or a
thinking,
car.
or like renting or leasing a car, or like not so much leasing a car, but like with a home. But with interest rates, I think you have to widen the scope.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of renting a home in the right situations. And I think it depends, if you're moving frequently, it does not make sense to buy a house, right? If you're, house tend to pay off somewhere between like 7 to 10 years of home ownership. Of course, there are outliers to everything we're going to talk about. But renting is not necessarily throwing away money. A lot of times it's the best decision. Maybe you're trying out a location. Maybe you're not going to stay for a long time. Maybe you're using your money in some other way, right? Where renting makes more sense. So everything is like situational specific. So I want everyone listening to really think about that there really aren't any rules. It's just whatever's right for you in your life, like at this specific moment in time.
Go back to the high yield savings.
Yes.
Were there certain institutions that you recommend people look into if they're interested in that?
Yeah, some of my favorites are Ally Bank. I love Ally a lot because you can set up separate savings accounts. So I'm a big fan of labeling each savings account a different goal. So like if you have a house fund and you
Love
have
that.
a car fund and you have a kid fund, whatever it might be, so you can easily see those buckets. Marcus is another great one. Those are probably the two that I recommend the most often. Discover has a great one. American Express has a great one. So if you just look up best high yield savings accounts, pretty much any of those that are going to be talked about in those articles are going to be kind of the top tier places. But I'm just a fan of like more money is more money. So even if you're earning an extra $20 a month, right, that's extra money then that we have in play that we can put somewhere else.
What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and all of the virtual money?
I've known about it for a long time. I watched it when it had another kind of big upswing back in like 10 years ago, honestly. I think it's still too new. I think it's still a little bit out there. You can definitely make money, but gosh, it's like you got to have your Vegas money, right? It's got to be money that you're okay with.
Yeah.
But what about like the CBDC that's like freaking everybody out? That's the, like the central bank digital dollar, or you have BRIC, or like the euro's dead. Like what do you tell people when they freak out about that kind of stuff? Because I can't lie. I mean, it's definitely scary.
It is definitely scary. There's always going to be, I think, pushes against the money system that has been sort of the old guard, right? There's always going to be new things that come up against it. I think it's going to take a lot before something would change just how we do money on a day-to-day basis, right? There's a lot behind the scenes. And so, I think there's always going to be an alternate currency. And as long as you understand what you're putting your money in, as long as you really understand it, I think that, fair game if it's something that you want to do. But I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, is we see, social posts or, somebody's saying, oh, I made, X amount of dollars investing in Bitcoin or whatever it might be, but
DM me Bitcoin to get my free guide. I mean,
exactly. But again, we don't know the behind the scenes story. We can't look under the hood. We can't see, what is actually going on. So you always want to make sure that you at least have a general understanding of what you're putting your money in.
And that's, I think, like the punctuation on this is, there is no get rich fast scheme. No. I don't care who comes to you, like you said, what you see on your timeline, buy Bitcoin, like GameStop doesn't happen every day.
It does not. It does not. Yep.
Do it, like you said, slow and steady.
Historical, we could look back at everything and say, well, I should have, and I should have done this, and I should have done that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it doesn't work that way. A lot of people that made money on GameStop lost it somewhere else. I mean, there's just,
right.
it's just, that's the way money works.
Let's talk about how money can be related to our relationship with our children. So, a lot of moms go through the difficult decision of, do I want to go back to work? Do I want to be a stay-at-home
Uh,
mom? Daycare is this amount. Does it even make sense for me to work if it's just being sent right over to daycare? What are some things that you think women should consider if they're facing these decisions?
It's funny. I actually have a girlfriend who is pregnant now, and she's kind of thinking these things out. And I think if you're pregnant, it's hard to know any of those answers until your child's actually there and
mhm.
you're kind of in the situation. Um, Again, it's so situational based. I think you have to think about, did I like what I did before I had, my child? Like, was that a career that I want to go back to? Or is there a skill that maybe I haven't explored that you really want to explore? I think, having those conversations with your partner, if you're in that type of relationship,
Mhm.
about, you know, how do we want to use our money? Like, what are the things that we want to create with our money? Do we need two incomes? Can we live on one income? What is the mental health implications of me going back to work or not
Mm-hmm.
going back to work? So thinking about those sides as well. I think with money, it's easy to just look purely at the money. And that obviously that's the reality of, many situations, but I think we need to think about it more holistically too, and think about, um, I think a lot of women feel this pressure of like, should I go back to work? Am I a bad mom? And I'm not a bad
Gianna and I
mom.
have
And
the same, yeah.
it's,
Like, you can share your thought process just because you and I have talked about this, and I don't think enough people heard it. So talk about your struggle.
Yeah. So for me, what I struggle with is like my self worth,
Mm-hmm.
and that I am not worth anything if I don't have the big salary and the big title. And you talked earlier about like these kind of conversations in your head are really framed by what you see around 7 or 8 years old. And that totally tracks for me. I know that there were situations in my life, and to not to a fault. I mean, like there were good things where it was impressed on me, like go to college, get
Yes.
a good job, be out there in the workforce, and
It's
that
also a very millennial ideal
yeah.
or
mhm.
ideology.
But I really have taken that hard. That like, and my husband is so sweet and will come in and be like, but you do have a job and you do have a massive title. You're a mom and you're raising these two children. Like this is what your job is. And this is the most important job. And like you're doing more than everybody combined. And it's just really hard for me to hear that. And it's like, I know that right now in this phase, I have the opportunity to be home and I'm so grateful for it. And I want to be with them and I want to do these things. And then when they become older, I can go back out into the workforce
Mm-hmm.
again. But it's just really hard for me to believe the narrative that other people see and say.
What if let's go back to this practice example. Like, what if you practice just for a week? And if a week feels too long to you, like take a day or 48 hours. What if you practice the thought of, my self-worth is actually not tied to the amount of money I make? What would that look like? How would you redefine or define your self-worth if money was out of the equation? How would you value yourself if money wasn't there? And think about, like, can I hold myself in that space to detach those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I immediately just got like a rush of positive vibes through my body, you even saying that, because it's like if I took that veil off of you're not bringing in a salary, you're not bringing in what you used to, and I really focused on, but look how productive you're being for your family, and look at what you got done, and look at the
Mm-hmm.
ways that you contributed to your community, and look what you did here. Like it, like immediately is like, it's like I said, taking that film off and being like, oh, look how bright it is
Wow, look
Yeah.
at me.
behind here.
I often
Yeah.
tell people, like open, it depends on you if you're a post-it note person or a notes app on your phone, but like keep a notes app, and every time you do something during the day and you are like, okay, this is like, I did a good, like I did this thing, like this is part of my self-worth. Type,
Mm-hmm.
write it down. Like, don't even think about it. Just write it down, write it down. At the end of the day, like look back over, look at all the things that you contribute to during the day that have nothing to do with the amount of money you earn, but help prove to you, right, that your self-worth is so much more than just what that paycheck is.
Yeah.
I'm sure she wouldn't write things down because she would be too busy doing other things. Seriously, like the list should be longer than it would be.
Yeah. Okay,
Here's
your
the
turn,
other thing,
Casey.
though.
Your turn.
Let's think just about the podcast in this sense. Okay, we're not making $1 million every episode, right? But does that make the guests that we bring on or the message that they promote any less relevant, needed, necessary, impactful? Absolutely not. So do we love it? Absolutely. Are we learning? Are we growing? Yes. And I think that, to your point, Shannah, is where we need to be. But going back to Gianna's point, for me, I'm no longer with Fox. I've been in television since 2012, so over a decade at this point. All in on the podcast, all in on being a mom and a wife, and we're going to start trying for our second soon. And it is that. It's like, wow, I don't have an email anymore that says CaseyMcDonald@fox.com, and I don't have a boss, or I don't have a weekly meeting, and even like less than the paycheck, I think there's this innate thing of like the status that comes with having a job.
Yep, status.
And I don't know if that's our generation, but for me, and I know Gianna, a lot of our friends, we graduated, was 2012, Gianna was 2011. We got great jobs out of college. We worked really hard. You know, work was, a lot of my friends didn't get married until later. So it was work. And that was a chapter in our lives, but that was our personality. That was our, everything we worked for every single day. So I think not having that bucket full is weird to us. Mm-hmm. Like not having to answer to somebody. We're like, oh my God, like, am I even doing anything?
Yeah. So let's flip that narrative on the side though. Let's think about like what you are doing. Like you're the CEO of the show. You're bringing all of this amazing information to this community of people that really need it, right? That are tuning in. You are, essentially like the CEO of your family, right? You're keeping so I think it's, there's a lot of like detaching and then reattaching something mm-hmm. Something that is true, but also something that is affirming. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's, the more we can kind of shatter and tear down these narratives that have just been sort of built up automatically, I think the more empowering you can feel, the more in control you can feel about your money, about the direction you're going into. And that just has so many rippling effects out, right? But changing how you think about yourself, changing how you talk about yourself, all of that will infuse into your kids, right? And infuse into the messages that they're picking up from you. So, I shared this on a recent episode, but you can say something about money to a child, right? But in essence, what they're really going to do is mimic your behavior. So if you're saying something,
do as I say, not as I do. God, the amount of times I heard that as a child.
But not even that. So this reminds me of something with my sister and my dad. So my dad would say money doesn't grow on trees. He would, if I went to the mall and asked for $20, he'd be like, okay, Paris Hilton. Like, like it was stuff like that. So my sister would order Jimmy John's at Alabama when she was in college, but she would get it on DoorDash. So the $7 sandwich turns into a $27 sandwich with delivery. And he's like, Jesus Christ, like, why do you keep doing it? So how do you talk to kids? If maybe maybe you're guilty of it too. How do you talk to kids and maybe work with them to set healthy, better money boundaries?
Yeah, I think it's involving them in conversations, involving them in decisions. So I think even, having young kids, setting aside like, okay, we can fill in the blank with whatever numbers, right? Let's say we have $100 a month and we're deciding like what we want to do with our kids. Like what outing do we want to do? Or do we want to save it for vacation? Like bringing the kids, even young, into the conversation of like, hey, we have this set amount of money. What do you think we should do? How do you think we should siphon this off? Like maybe we could put a little here. Maybe we could like bring them into the conversation process from a really early age. So they start to understand like, oh, there's this set amount. Oh, we can parcel this out, or, oh, we can put it towards this, or, oh, and I think that's really healthy for kids because
At what age? When do you start? So do you like an allowance on the record? You like an allowance?
Oh, I'm dying for this convo.
I actually do like an allowance.
Okay, that's great. And maybe the month frame is too big, but I don't know how much school lunches are now, but maybe you say, okay, we have this much money. And obviously you prefigure it out for the week.
Of course.
But we have this much. So do you go that deep of like school lunches, like take them to the grocery store with you and say, okay, this is how much money we have. Like, what do you do?
I think all of that is really healthy, right? Because these are the foundational lessons about money that most people don't learn, right? Most of us have to figure this stuff out somewhere like in college or after college. So if I already come equipped with like understanding like, oh, we have X amount of dollars we're spending at the grocery and we can either buy this like $4 cereal or we could buy, like if I already feel empowered to make these intentional decisions around money, just think about how that would ripple through those years, right? So I think, and if you don't want to do an allowance with money, you don't have to. You could do it with fake money. You could do it with stickers.
Right.
You could do it with all sorts of things that aren't an actual dollar amount.
You can get wooden coins on Amazon,
it doesn't matter.
Whatever.
Yeah. You can do whatever. But what you're teaching them is, right, like we earn something. And then once we earn something, we have to figure out what we want to do with it. Right. And you can start teaching those lessons. Like, do we want to save? Do we want to invest it? Do we want to, you can start teaching these concepts from a really early age. Right. And I think that also helps you as the teacher because you're talking about money now from a positive standpoint. And it helps the child too to learn like, oh, it's not scary. Yeah, it doesn't have to stay taboo. We can have
I want to take it to a scary place though. What if you're with someone? Like I want to talk about when you think you should talk about finances because that is a difficult conversation when you're dating and maybe you're planning to move in together, not married yet. You don't know what the other person makes and maybe you haven't talked about it. So I want to know that. And then I want to know about the other end of the spectrum. I dated a guy once who wanted a receipt for like a coffee that I bought. Like he's like, do you have the receipt from Starbucks? And I'm like, what? No. Yeah, I wiped my butt with it. Like, you know what? Like, no, I don't have it. But I understand. Gianna's face is about to explode.
That's why a guy you used to date.
So how do you talk about it?
Okay, I think that I think you should talk about it very early on, but I don't think that you should go straight in for the kill, which is what a lot of people do. They go straight in for like, how much money do you make?
Who's the podcaster that said that? What was her name? There's some podcaster that said that on the first date, she makes the guys show them their their bank balance.
Oh,
she's like a Gen Z-er. Yeah, I mean, that's too much.
Yeah, yes. I would not suggest that. That's not a healthy way to start, right? But what I love is questions, right? Open-ended questions that start dialogue. So
Drew, here we go.
Yeah, my question about like, how do you feel about money? Tell me about, how you grew up, like how money was an influence there. Tell me like questions like I ask on my podcast. So I do a segment where I ask a question like, if you had to describe your relationship with money as a cartoon character, who would it be?
I love
right?
That.
Like ask these kinds of questions that start a dialogue. And so what you can do with somebody is you can start to see, oh, how do they interact with money? How do they think about money? What are their goals? Like, what are you ask a question about? Like, if you had unlimited money in your bank account, like, what would you do? How, where would you spend it? And then the work on your side of the person asking the question is to accept the answer from a shame-free, judgment-free place, right? You are not there to judge their responses. You're there to collect information and start this dialogue. And I think if you do that from the beginning, you start its interaction around having these conversations with money that aren't just the straight, like you spent money on what, and you did this. And, that is like at the immediate, shut down place. So I think having these conversations early on, and look, if you ask some of these questions to someone and they're just like not going to answer these questions, then you pretty much understand a lot of information. Right? You understand that probably every money conversation you have going forward is going to be a difficult one.
Right.
So, you can alleviate somebody out of the mix without having to just come out and straight and say, how much money do you make? Because that is just that I feel like it was a recipe for disaster.
I have the
exactly. You just made me think of something. Oh, so okay, that was dating, but like especially when you're married, okay, that can be a little bit better. You've
Yeah, like
obviously made the decision, but then having children, I think throws in a whole other wrench to it because now we're back to like that mental health thing and generational and all this. I'm seeing this now and start like I think it's going to be an issue that Mark and I have moving
I think I
forward.
know where this is going. Ooh.
Yeah, we were just raised differently. I mean, I had a job from the time that I could, and he that was never expected of him. But that's fine because it was like focus on your academics and your athletics and all that. But it's to me, I'm like I really think that our children should have jobs immediately. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing experience. It's not just about money and he's like, "But why if we can afford the things and they don't need to work for it?" I'm like, "It's not just about that." So that's one small picture of it. So I know you had an episode recently that was about like what happens when the saver marries the spender. And research shows that actually happens more often than not because people are going to be attracted to the person that behaves
Mm-hmm.
most
Opposite.
opposite from them. What are some ways that people can have conversations with their spouses about money and the family?
So I
Love
talk about
this.
something called the money date. And, just like you date your spouse and you go out, I think you also need to have dates around money. So I
That
we
is
we do this every
smart.
week, but certainly you do not need to do that frequency. Once a month works for most couples, but it's thinking about it like a date. So go somewhere that you enjoy, whether it's a restaurant or a park or put on music or light candles or whatever feels like an experience that is approachable for both of you, right? And I want you to sit down and I want you to talk about what's going on in your own world about money. So, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your aspirations? What are the things that are going well? What are the things that are not? I want you to open up the dialogue around these conversations. Now, also in our money dates, we look at like, okay, where did we spend money this month? Is there anything we want to change? What's kind of coming up? So, we use this as kind of a coming together part, but I think you could also use the money date just as merely as a place where you are coming together, you schedule it, and you're going to have these conversations, right? So you're going to talk about your different viewpoints on, kids and having a job. And you're like, okay, can we come to some sort of like mutual understanding where we both feel like we were heard? Maybe we don't have to make the decision this time, right? But we've started the dialogue. So I really love the money date. I think it's great for couples because we can just get so lost in like the day to day, life. And
That's
then
a great idea also for the expectation setting of like, this is what we're going to talk about tonight.
yes,
Because if you,
Right.
you say you're going on
Yes.
a date,
Yes.
you like
You're gonna
expect
ruin
it.
it.
Yeah. You're like, oh, why are we talking about this right now? It's like, no, this,
yes,
this is actually what we're here to talk about.
yeah, that
The
this
Yeah. I
is
love
this
that.
specific date, right? It's for this specific reason. And yeah, so you have the expectation going in. And I think you can, it just makes it feel so much more approachable versus just
Hmm.
like catching somebody on the fly and being like, you're talking about something money and the other person is just not prepared for it or it's not the time, right? So it's setting aside that specific time, I think is really helpful.
And Shaq said it. I'm rich. My kids aren't rich. So I think it's that.
Right.
No, it is. It's that, yes, mommy and daddy love you so much. We're going to take care of you. We're going to give you more than we were given because that's, I think, every parent's goal and dream and wish. But
Right.
you don't want to spoil your child and you don't want them on the payroll for the rest of their lives. I mean, seriously, you guys want to
Yes.
retire. You need to think, and that's a very daunting task for people also, the retirement aspect. And what are we going to do when we are finished working and what investments do we have? And I think that's the biggest piece of maybe Sienna isn't washing dishes, but maybe she loves to cook, and so the local baker has some jobs for her setting up the front window or whatever it
Exactly.
is that
Yeah.
taps into or leans into your kids whatever, likes, not dislikes, just likes. There was somewhere that I was going to go with this and now I don't remember. So G, you take it and I'll remember when I remember.
I mean, you're talking about like providing for your children, but then also loving them so much you want to give them everything. Like, where's that boundary, and how do you make sure that you
Yeah, I
stay at
guess
an
how do you talk
appropriate
about
line?
that? Like
Yeah.
If Mark wants to get every colored Power Wheels that they make because Sienna likes the pink one, so he goes out and buys a blue one and a black one and a white one and a purple one. Like,
Well, that's what he
how,
does. But
but
there was an
how do you talk
example.
to him about
There
that?
was an example from the other day. So my parents got her this like little ukulele or whatever you want to call it. It's like a mini guitar that they got her for her birthday. And she was so obsessed with it. It was adorable. She wanted to bring it to school. And we tried to be like, but it might get hurt at school. You know, what if some of the other kids want to play? Are you going to share? Like, I don't think you should bring it to school. You have it when you play. She's like, no, I'm bringing it to school. And
She's like, I'm gonna hit you over the head with it if you say one more word.
I have this hilarious picture of her with her guitar standing in the parking lot of the school with Mark and the teacher as she's discussing whether she can bring it in. So Mark and I pulled away, and he was like, oh man, like, I wonder if that thing's going to make it out alive. I wonder if it, you know, it might get broken today.
Mm-hmm.
And my immediate thought was, oh, well, you know, like, I'll ask my mom for the link and we'll just order her another one. And then I thought, no.
Right.
Because then she has to learn that that was the repercussion for taking it to school, and that it was a gift. And this is where, you know,
and
I
mommy
know
said no.
There's this anxiety around, and this is where I think there's a lot in my husband's family that he openly talks about, there was an anxiety of making the family happy and making the children happy and just providing whatever they needed.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, where is that hindering your children?
I think it's hindering a lot, right? So let's go back to that stat, like your money habits are formed by age 7, right? All those years are so important in your development, your relationship with money. So, you know, if it is that they, you know, you want to buy 5 of everything in each color, bring the kid into that decision point, you know, bring them into like, okay, there's 5 options. Which option should we purchase? Like consistently bring them into these decision points.
But what if the husband's the one buying one in every color? Because my husband buys one in every color too.
Yeah.
So just say like, hey, let's try something different. Because remember, like your kid is a person, right? You're setting them up for success. And so I think constantly thinking about what would you have wanted if you could like rewind your life and change your own relationship with money from the get-go. What would you have wanted? You know, and we're not going to do all
that's a brilliant way to approach that. Yeah.
You know, you really want to set them up for success, and primarily because, you know, 70% of people are stressed out about money. It doesn't matter how much money's in their bank account, right? Let's like shatter that. It doesn't matter. People are stressed out about money. So if you can change that narrative from an early age, I mean, that's just, it's setting someone up for success. If they have, you know, a little job and they earn a little bit of money, maybe it doesn't matter the amount of money they're earning, but you know, maybe you could take that money, maybe you could invest it, maybe you could put it in a little savings account. You know, when they're 18, they've suddenly got, you know, a windfall of money they can do something with, or right. So you're giving your child these options down the line, and it doesn't specifically have to revolve around the amount of money or needing the money or not needing the money.
What are some things, though, you should avoid saying or you should say when your child does make the money to not make them think money's all that matters? Nothing else matters. I just need to make money when I get older.
Yeah, you know, that's a really tricky thing to balance. And I think it's just, you know, doing the best you can with the language of like, okay, it's great. You earned, you know, $20 doing whatever. Like, let's, here are our choices of what we can do with the money. Like, let's put it somewhere like we're growing it for our future. We're, you know, we're investing in, you know, all of those future things that we want to do or that we want to buy. So I think it's just, it's constantly trying to come at it from a positive spin. But then this is where the emotional side, this is where, you know, it's where you detaching your self-worth from earning the money. This is where these things come back to, because if child has seen you do that, they're going to know, oh, my self-worth, it doesn't have anything to do with how much money I make or don't make, right? And so I think it's also balancing that, you know, emotional side with money and understanding that we can't just show our kids that money is the ultimate thing.
Could it be like praising them for something that happened at
Yes.
work or at school or whatever that wasn't associated with money? So not like, wow, look at
Absolutely.
this huge paycheck, but wow, you really helped that customer or whatever
Right.
the situation is.
Absolutely. You know, and that goes back to like our allowance conversation. We
Mm-hmm.
could take money off the table. We could make it, you know, jelly beans or stickers or whatever, right? So we're showing like, oh, we did something, we earned something, and then we can use that for something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be money related, even though it is, you're ultimately teaching these lessons about the core sort of concepts around money. But yeah, praising things that they did well that have absolutely nothing to do with money are, you know, it's a fantastic way to build it up.
Do
I
you
have
have
one. Oh,
any,
go ahead.
just real quick, do you have any resources or websites that are really helpful that parents can go to for discussions on money or activities that they can do with their kids?
There aren't a lot that have, you know, activities that I've
Mm-hmm.
found that are great. I'm trying
I
to
think
think.
your idea of just like looking at the week, like
Yeah.
which days do you want to bring school
Yes.
lunch? Let's do that. Okay, you're going to come to the food store with mommy, and this is, you know, you have $20 to spend for all your food for the week. Like who, you know, oh, I like chicken. Oh, I like lettuce. I like, you know, fruit snacks. This is how much you get to spend. And obviously, like Sienna's 3, she's too young for that. But in some capacity, I think that definitely
Yeah, just I
normalizes
would
that
say just
conversation.
keep it simple, you know, keep it simple. Like, you know, if it's once a week that you're at the store and you're like, oh, okay, so we've got like, you know, whether it's truth or not, like
Yeah.
we've got $20 left. Like, ooh, we could get this or this or
Everything
this.
ends in
Like,
like 79 or 84. You're like,
right. I know. You don't
yeah.
have to you don't
You're
have to
just
do
like,
the
the milk
exact
costs a
math.
dollar,
Yeah.
which it hasn't for, you know, 100 years. But
Back in my day,
Yeah,
let's
right.
milk
talk
was
about,
only $1.
yeah, right. Not anymore. Let's talk about, because Gianna and I were talking to Shannah about this before we started. The holiday season just passed. Raging anxiety over money. I didn't get enough presents. Oh my God, I forgot this person. Oh my God, this person got me a really nice gift. I was only going to get them
Right.
this. I need to get them that. You're overspending. There are unforeseen expenses, obviously, every single year, coupled with how expensive it is to live. What can people do now to set boundaries with that? Because I know for me, once I started making a lot more money when I was at my last job, Gianna's the same way. I get off giving to other people. Like I love like finding the perfect gift for someone and them just like lighting up when they open it. Like I love doing for other people, but I need to set boundaries with myself, which I'm working on doing. So how do you set boundaries with, you know, wanting to give the world when that's not what you should be doing because it's setting everything up for failure and expectations?
One, we're just going to come back to our self-worth conversation over and over again and just,
Yeah.
you know, keep reaffirming to yourself that my value as a human isn't tied to the best gift that I give for whatever person. So I think that's like first sort of internal boundary.
Right.
The second thing to think about is even if money is not an issue, setting up like, okay, this is my gift list. You know, these are the people I'm going to buy for, and this is how much I'm going to spend for, you know, these people. Like keeping yourself in some sort of
Mm-hmm.
container is also really healthy. And I think you know, there's also this expectation of like, oh, if somebody buys me something, I have to buy them something of equivalence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or more. And so this is where this like self-worth comes in and this self-work that you do of detaching from those narratives. It's okay if somebody gives you a gift and you don't give them one back. Like it's actually okay, right? The world is
Yeah.
not going to
And if
shatter.
that person has a problem with it, then they're the problem.
Absolutely,
Right. It's like
right?
if they're doing it for the expectation that they
Right.
get something, then they're not being authentic of giving it to you. Yeah.
And like one of the things I do, because I'm sort of like I love to shop online,
Same.
is I set for my own self my own boundary. I call it the 24-hour spending pause. So I will put whatever I want in the cart, and then I walk away from the computer. In 24 hours, I can come back
Yep.
and decide,
See if
do
I
I
really
still
want
want
that
these
thing.
things or do I not? And you know what? The beauty is like you're putting yourself in control of making a choice. I can
Yes.
decide like, yeah, okay, I really want all these things. Or I can decide, nah, maybe I don't need X, Y, and Z, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to spending too, the boundary is like setting yourself up for success to where you're taking out a little bit of the impulse, because shopping is so impulsive. You're taking just a little bit of it out for you to just think through, like, okay, is this really what I want to do? Like, is this the intention of how I really want to spend my money? And again, you're the only one that gets to decide if it's yes or no, and it doesn't matter. Whichever decision you make is the right decision for you.
So, reeling from all the holiday spending, what is a way that listeners can get back on track this year? We talked about the high yield savings accounts. What about saving for children too? 529 is something we have set up. Is that
Same.
good to do? Are there any other types of things that they should be looking into to make sure that they have a great year financially ahead?
Yeah, a 529 plan is great if you're saving for, a child's college. I always say to balance that with your own saving, whether it's saving in a retirement plan or some other investing you're doing. I think, if we look at the stats, like the amount of kids that are opting out of going to college these days is, a lot. And what is that going to look like in, 16, 17 years, however long for your kids? But the sad point is that college is just ridiculously expensive, and it's only getting
How I don't get it.
yeah,
Because they can. Because they can.
it's only getting worse and worse and worse. So I think, I like to tell people, I hate budgeting. So I basically throw out that concept.
What? The financial expert hates budgeting? We need to-
That was a bomb that you just dropped.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Dynamite drop in, Shannah.
I like to talk about creating a spending plan, and I call mine the mindful money.
Okay,
plan.
wait. Is that just a different
No,
narrative?
it isn't. It isn't, because a spending plan, right, is I'm incorporating on there my goals. I'm incorporating on there the things that I want to do, right? So I am proactively using every dollar that comes into my bank account in a way that is helping me fund all of these different things, right? So a budget typically is something you set out before the beginning of the month. You don't look at it again, and then you're like, this doesn't work because it's not amount of money that I thought. Well, yeah, because it's not inclusive, right? So a spending plan is, we're going to exhaust all of the different things, all the different places we want our money to go, right? And then we're going to direct our money in these locations. So I tell people, like, anything that you could set up automatically, that it will flow, like it'll flow in the savings account, it'll flow in this investment, it'll flow in the 529, that it will go all these places without me even having to think about it. That is the best way that you want to set up your money. So I incorporate on my spending plan 3 goals that I have. Like, what are the 3 things that I want? And then I also incorporate why. So
I have a question.
Why? Yes.
What about for the woman listening, or the man, because men can listen to Mother Up as well. And they say, Shannah, I don't have money to put in a 529. Like, I don't have money to put in a savings account. Like, I am barely making
using
ends meet.
every cent that comes in.
Yeah, I'm waiting on the next paycheck. I'm selling things on Poshmark. Like, what do you say to them? Like, how can they earn extra money? What are there any like tips or any things you can suggest?
Well, there are like a million different side hustles that every single human can do. Like you
what
just mentioned.
What are the worth it ones? Like, what are ones that you've been like, okay, that's cool?
Yeah, I think selling things. I think also thinking about, like, what skills do I have, right? So I love to bake. And I used to bake like all of these, goodies around the holidays and like give them to all these people. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, people really love my stuff. So they started paying me for like my cupcakes and things. And I'm like, not that I needed the money, but for me, it was like a mental thing where I was like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm creating this thing, right? So especially for women, like, think about what talents, what skills you have, like, what could you offer? Whether it's like coaching for somebody, like maybe you're great at something, right? And you want to help people, like the resume, or you want to help, there's a million different things, right? All of us have these skills that are valuable that somebody else would pay for. So thinking about those sorts of things, I think is really important. But, if you don't have a lot of money, if money is really tight, I want you to become a detective. I want you to go into your bank account, and I want you to look for opportunities to find money. And it doesn't always mean cutting things out. Sometimes it means better ways of spending things. Whether I think the stat is like most of us have 3 to 4 subscriptions that we're paying for that we don't use, right?
Oh my
Look
gosh,
for those.
the worst. Yeah. Or ones that I've canceled that don't actually cancel and I don't catch it until a few months later.
One of the big things I know for us in particular is like Uber Eats, meal delivery services, where if you go through, and this may sound like hoity-toity fancy pants thing, if you go through and add up all of your meal deliveries or all of the meals that you've eaten out for the whole month, and then price a chef who drops off family meals to your home every week or twice a week, I would bet you the chef is going to be cheaper and it's at the end of the day going to be healthier.
Yeah, there's so many services that are great for like that food prep type of stuff. You're absolutely right. That's, probably more of a financial thing than a nutrition thing at the end of the day.
Yes.
Shannah, if someone is looking to unbeep their relationship with money, you have that fabulous podcast we've been talking about, Everyone's Talking Money, and a course offering that's coming soon. Where can people find you and connect with you if they want to learn more from today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. You can follow my podcast, Everyone's Talking Money, on any podcast player that you love listening to. And that will be the hub to find out all the different offerings. We are going to be launching a mindful money course that's going to dive into all of this, the inside work and the outside work around money. So if you really want to transform things, that will be the place to go. So tune into the podcast, and you can also head over to my website, everyone'stalkingmoney.com.
When's the course launching?
The course is launching in January. So it depends on when this episode comes out.
Great. Yeah. So go check our website now. It might be live. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. I feel like in the future, I want to have you back in a couple months. We'll put it out to the listeners, like specific questions that they have.
Yeah.
Yes. And we'll get you for that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.